Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Great Plains Wildlife Reserve. I've just noticed that I've added an extra word to the name for each new zoo, which does not bode well for the future. Anyway, I hope you've had a terrific week, and please join me in saying hello to our newest little ones, 2 baby skunks that have been born. I hope you're looking forward to today's habitat for, well, you probably guessed it, the raccoons. The plan for today will be short and sweet, as we have already got the building in place from our last episode. Currently, the end of our narrow section of this habitat is a typical age 5 drawing of a house. What we want to do today is raise the roof for a good section of the building in order to increase the amount of climbing space. What this will also enable is a large outer caged area that can extend beyond the building and still have enough clearance for the keepers to access it down the side. This will only come across half the face of the building so that the front is the tallest it can possibly be for the best viewing, and the guests will stand behind a railing so they can't get too close and lose any sticky little fingers. I also want some fake exterior access for the keepers so that it looks a little bit more realistic. The real entrance, of course, is already on the inside. Okay, before we get into the build, if you enjoyed today's video, know that likes are always appreciated. And if you want to see more like this, you can of course subscribe and stick around for more animals, some dinosaurs on the way, a little bit of farming, and the occasional Pokemon. There's almost too much that I want to do. And finally, as always with the Plains videos, get thinking about your best name suggestions for trash pandas. I will probably be keeping a minimum of 1 male and 2 females, so if we get a really good extra, we may end up keeping it on. Really bring your A game, because it's going to take something very special to steer me away from Rocket. As for the skunks, we've had a couple of perfect suggestions from Christy, and I think we're going to use them both. So, welcome all. Our male skunk, and how could we go with anything else really? It's Flower from Bambi. And for our female, sticking with the floral theme, the beautiful Petunia. Thank you all for your suggestions. I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with for our raccoons. Now, I've been waffling through the start of this build. Thankfully, it's just modifying the existing building to account for our climbing plans. You may have noticed that I raised the roof in stages. This was just me faffing around, not really knowing how I wanted to have it. I had considered a few different options to give more character to the shape of the building, but ultimately, practicality prevailed, and I decided to make as much room as possible for the little guys. As with the previous habitats, I've tried to keep some of the keeper access point hidden. It doesn't work quite as well here, just due to the way the building is set up, but I think what we have is acceptable. One thing you might pick up on is that because of the shape of this building and the way the interior section is only visible for a portion of the indoor habitat area, the guests only get a view of one end, maybe up to about 80% depending on where you stand. Raccoons aren't particularly shy or in need of privacy, so this was just something that I overlooked when designing the initial shape. But as long as the best views are still available, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Now, we're starting off simple, as you can probably tell from the previous videos. There's not a lot of big, impressive building yet, and that makes sense given that we are just a small local wildlife centre. As such, there are some elements that will be reused. The animal door, for example. As this is the same building, I've just copied it as it is with no edits, besides having it partially closed. I think this ties the two habitats together, despite quite a clear separation in the overall aesthetics. That'll become apparent at the end, by the way. Now, as I said, I closed the gate slightly just to give it a little bit of variation, but what's interesting is the fact that the raccoons can still get through it. This is probably something that I'll complain about in next week's video, just based on what I've done so far. But the hitboxes are so inconsistent. Take the chickens in the Highlands. A bad hitbox can ruin builds. It can certainly ruin my day, but that is a story for another time, so we'll have to see how that pans out for next week. Using my vast experience from Trondheim, I thought the best way to house these raccoons would be a fully enclosed cage, similar to the lynx habitat we built. but something a little bit smaller, they don't need as much space. And while accessing those fond memories of one of my favourite habitats, I seem to have blocked out all of the issues that I had. Let's start with what went well. I used wall pieces to make sure that the main frame of the cage was straight and consistent throughout, and managed to put together a simple, eye-catching design, with an area with plenty of space for climbing, and an access route around the rear that keepers can use to bypass the main building and go straight through. Complete with an airlock, air quotes, airlock, because it's very open, to make sure that the animals can't escape when the door is opened. I used a lot of those light woods again, which tie in nicely to the fencing of the skunk outdoor section, and even provided a high access for the animals to enter and exit the building without needing to move along on the ground. Now, what didn't go so well, wood is evidently climbable. All wood, apparently. Not only is it climbable, if the animal can climb something, for some reason, that also means that they can phase through it like vision and escape. And unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, objects can't be climbing disabled in franchise mode, which meant that the entire structure was escapable. Yeah. This did also happen to a certain extent in the lynx habitat, and I think I fixed it with aquatic rocks to block access and double layered mesh. For some reason the mesh is not climbable. Anyway, my solution will become visible in the next few parts of this video, as it wasn't until I added the animals that I noticed. So, when halfway the main beams become grey, know that I have cast them in metal to prevent the little claws from gaining purchase. This is kind of a different issue, same solution thing though. With the lynx in Trondheim, we were concerned about the animals escaping through force, either by breaking the fence in or squeezing their little bodies through gaps that they really have no business fitting in. Here we also need to account for a certain degree of intelligence and dexterity. While they lack opposable thumbs, a raccoon's front paws are surprisingly nimble and capable of assessing tasks in front of them. And while they might not know how to use them, for example, to turn a key or pull a door handle, they have an incredible long-term memory, so they'll remember their failures and be able to try something different next time. It's a good thing all they want is to access your bins, really. If they learn to hold a grudge, they could be dangerous. Similarly to the skunks, there are also some people who keep raccoons as pets. Although, if you do, you'll only end up regretting it in the end. You'd think higher intelligence would make for a great pet, right? Well, for some species, sure. But take certain dog breeds, for instance. Really smart breeds, like border collies or huskies, if they aren't engaged and trained well, they're smart enough to realise that they don't need to obey your commands, and they'll just live how they want. Now imagine that in an animal that can open cupboards, slide locks, slash fabrics, gnaw wood both low and high, solve problems, and all of this while you're asleep, because they're most active at night. Lots of animals are cute. Leave the raccoons outside rummaging through bins where they belong. To be fair, I think there are people in America who have worse pets, like chimpanzees or alligators or tigers, so in the scheme of things, a skunk or a raccoon is small potatoes. Not that that's a good justification, but I can see how one might rationalise it. I originally planned to have the cage come back only about halfway down the building, but as you can see, it has ended up coming the entire length of the indoor area. Obviously, this is for the keeper access, otherwise they'd have to suffer the indignity of crawling under the animal door to reach the outside. Although, who knows, maybe that would add some entertainment for the guests. There's not a lot to see in the overhead today, only a little extension and some additional power and water, and a little longer than planned, as I said. But the vision was clear and the contractors stuck to the brief. I'm not much of a fan of climbing frames in general. At some point I will need to put some real time and effort into better examples with more thought, perhaps in a tropical zoo with some apes or monkeys. But it is not this day. We do need some climbing features for the raccoons though, so I'm going to do my best. The clear starting point was going to be the higher access door, as this was going to be used pretty frequently, and I can work my way down from there with staggered platforms and a nice little raised walkway in front of the window at a good height for the guests. Something I've noted in the climbing frames I have made in the past is that animals will often climb support beams and pass through the middle of platforms to get on top, which I would like to avoid here if I can. So a lot of these will be supported either with metal brackets mounted to the walls, or with steel cables suspended from a rigging on the ceiling, similarly to what we did in the skunks last week. This means that the raccoons will have no choice but to navigate the area by using the routes I've created. I've also added in one of those railings that look a little bit like an unfinished roller coaster track, just to throw in a bit of something different visually really. I haven't seen the animals using it yet, but it's showing as traversable. Maybe because there's nothing up there for it to need to use it. I don't know. Now this is also going to be a nocturnal area. Remember I said that that was becoming the thing for this zoo? So the rigging is also going to be where we mount the red lighting. Although it took a bit of fiddling to get them even, as they needed to be placed in a way that the raccoons couldn't reach them. I don't know what the raccoons would want with the lights, but the crafty little buggers would find some way to remove them regardless. The two nocturnal houses we've made so far have been very natural. The armadillo one was made to look like a rocky desert, and the skunks was made to more look like a woodland floor. But this is going to be a little bit more artificial, like something you might expect to see in a real zoo. Obviously they'll still have plenty of bedding dotted around, so it won't just be bare concrete, but I've chosen not to coat the floor in soil or fake sand. Mostly I want this to stand apart. Too much similarity, we might as well have just thrown the raccoons in with the skunks. But also, practically, with all the obstacles, it would be much easier for the keepers to maintain this habitat with this plan. I'm going to have some decoration, mind you. Some rocks for enrichment and more to climb on. Some autumn leaves sprinkled about to cover up some of the prison grey, from the guest's perspective at least. And one little additional flourish just to set the room off. Some Virginia creeper, probably artificial in this case, along the main backdrop to the guest window. I know, it seems a little bit out of place, but wait until you see it under the nightlights. It lights up like fire, and I just really love how it adds to the overall aesthetic. Finally, as always, the outdoor section. I'll have to keep this brief as I've cut out most of the climbing frame building. One side is enough for this video, thank you very much. This might be the first clear view of the changes to the cage. The grey is a bit less charming, it adds slightly to the sense of being imprisoned. However, the inside is going to be very inviting. In some ways, it reminds me of a small home aviary. It ended up being a little bit smaller than I planned. I started by adding in 2 males and 3 females, but they ended up being on the limit for space. It's those pesky aquatic rocks. If they didn't look so good, I'd never use them. Unfortunately, once babies are there, there'll be no longer enough space, so we'll be staying at 1 male and 2 females moving forwards. The water requirements took me a little bit by surprise. I didn't take them for strong swimmers, but I'm always happy to oblige, especially when a lot of the climbing structures can sit above it anyway. Anyway, I'm not sure how long will be left in the video, so I'll leave it there and let you enjoy the cinematics in peace. Let me know what you think of our new cage, and don't forget to leave your suggestions for names for our new raccoons. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next one.